Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly fascinating essay from 2007 by an author named Shufeng. And it's interesting because it attempts to reconcile two ideas that, honestly, seem completely incompatible. On one hand, you have the undeniable, scientifically documented physical harms of smoking, and on the other, the theological salvation of the smoker's soul. It's this really unique exploration that blends theology, personal anecdotes, and Eastern philosophy to basically challenge how we view our everyday physical actions. I mean, we all carry a little guilt about our bad habits, right? But what if this essay is suggesting that our guilt is entirely misplaced?
So think about this for a second. Let's dive right into the core question driving this whole thing. Does a bad physical habit equal a bad soul? We're establishing Shufeng's central premise here, which argues that what damages our biological bodies doesn't necessarily damage our spiritual standing. And that's a radically different perspective, especially when you compare it to traditional Western sensibilities, where having physical discipline is so often equated directly with moral goodness. It's a really provocative separation of body and spirit, and it forces us to completely rethink the moral weight we usually attach to our earthly vices.
All right, let's get into Section 1, the physical toll, the bodily consequences of smoking. Now, Shufeng actually kicks off his entire argument by being super blunt about his own reality. He writes from his lived experience as a heavy, pack-a-day smoker who freely admits that yes, cigarettes are loaded with harmful toxins. By putting this up front, he makes it absolutely clear he isn't trying to deny science or medicine. Instead, he details these bizarre, highly specific physical reactions he had to 5 premium cigarette brands from Zimbabwe. Get this, Newberry gave him itchy red bumps all over his body, while Kingsgate caused severe lower back pain. Beverly literally led to a rapid vision decline, Madsun triggered headaches, and Everest invariably caused nosebleeds. By laying out these severe reactions, he proves he is under absolutely zero illusions about the bodily damage tobacco causes.
And yeah, he definitely doesn't stop there. He goes on to outline some pretty grotesque physical and practical drawbacks. He notes that smoking reduces libido, blackens the lungs, and leaves this lingering, unpleasant odor in cars and bedrooms. But here is where the real irony kicks in. For someone deeply committed to self-improvement, his physical habit actively fights his spiritual practices. As a practitioner of Qigong meditation, he actually observed that smoking delayed his entry into the Qi state from a mere 1 minute to over 10 minutes. So his conclusion for this part of human life is crystal clear. Practitioners of self-improvement and cultivation should really just avoid smoking altogether.
Which brings us right to Section 2, the spiritual question, external toxins versus internal defilement. So, after firmly establishing that smoking absolutely destroys the physical body, Shufeng makes this sharp, wild pivot. He asks, does this bodily harm, this daily intake of toxins, actually condemn a person to hell? To answer this, he relies on biblical scripture, specifically quoting Jesus in the Gospel of Mark. Nothing outside a person can defile them by going into them. Rather, it is what comes out of a person that defiles them. You can almost feel the aha moment he has here. He uses this exact passage to argue that cigarettes are merely external substances entering the biological body. Therefore, according to his interpretation, they literally cannot defile the inner goodness of the soul.
To back this up, he uses what's basically a massive slippery slope analogy. If inhaling toxic smoke condemns a soul, well, then the rules have to apply evenly across the board. That means eating a piece of pesticide-treated broccoli must also be a one-way ticket to hell. Anyone inhaling polluted city air, taking toxic modern medicine, or eating fruits grown with toxic fertilizers would also be destined for damnation. Since that seems, entirely unreasonable, his conclusion is that consuming toxins simply does not taint the human soul.
All right, Section 3, form versus spirit, the Buddhist perspective on outward habits. To kind of synthesize these conflicting ideas of bodily harm and spiritual purity, the explainer looks to Eastern philosophy to further separate our physical habits from our spiritual enlightenment. He references the teachings of Buddha Sakyamuni from Chapter 14 of the Diamond Sutra. One should develop the mind without dwelling on form. Do not let the mind dwell on sound, smell, taste, touch, or dharma. Shufeng uses this specifically to assert that judging someone's spiritual worth based on outward actions, like whether they smoke or drink, is actually a profound misunderstanding of the Dharma. So, what exactly do we mean by form in this context? Well, it literally just means outward physical realities, appearances, or habits. This includes smoking cigarettes, eating meat, or drinking alcohol. According to the text, a cigarette is merely form. It's the idea that judging someone's character just because they happen to enjoy a cigarette or steak shows a lack of true spiritual depth, and honestly, an unhealthy attachment to the material world.
Moving on to Section 4, the ultimate destination. What truly determines salvation?
Okay, if the physical stuff, the habits, the toxins we consume, the forms we engage with, doesn't dictate our afterlife, the author has to establish what actually does determine our ultimate destination. The answer, according to Zhu Feng and the teachings of Lifechanyuan, is defined as life's non-material structure. This is the spiritual, non-material perfection of a person that dictates their destination in heaven or hell, and it is completely independent of outward habits. Think of it like the invisible architectural blueprint of your soul. It's totally immune to the physical smoke or the tastes of the human world.
And you've got to appreciate the sheer audacity here. Xu Feng actually uses his own earthly vices as living proof for his followers. It takes a certain level of confidence for a spiritual teacher to openly admit to smoking heavily, eating meat, drinking alcohol, playing mahjong, and engaging in romantic relationships. Yet he presents his own life to highlight this contrast. He illustrates the concept that a person can partake in these everyday earthly activities while still working to perfect the highest level of dharma, completely separating the physical action from the spiritual state.
Ultimately, he boils the whole shebang down to this one stark reality. A perfect structure leads to heaven, an ugly structure leads to hell. The author concludes that your ultimate destination is determined entirely by the beauty or ugliness of your non-material structure. It is completely divorced from the physical toll of your earthly habits, no matter how demonstrably damaging those habits might be to your actual biological body. As we wrap up this explainer, we're really left sitting with this provocative paradox. If heaven and hell completely ignore our physical habits and the toxins we ingest, what truly shapes the structure of our soul? It leaves us to question our own judgments, doesn't it? The next time we feel a wave of guilt over a bad habit, or maybe find ourselves judging someone else for theirs, we might just have to ask ourselves, are we obsessing over the physical form while completely ignoring the spirit?